People ask me all the time, Mark, how do you have a college football channel and produce content every day and keep it going during the off season? Are you kidding? Do you see all that's going on in college football and all that we have to talk about? Yeah, let's talk it up for the next couple hours here at MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. The phone lines will be open here in just a second, 860-325-3687. Hopefully you've checked out the video post from the last couple of days involving the playoff. So a couple of weeks ago, we showed you year by year what an 8-team playoff would have looked like during the playoff era. From 2014 through this past season, what an 8-team playoff using two different formats, one being just simply the college football playoff rankings, which I would not recommend. They're dictated by 13 people in a room. So they're completely just based on their opinion. But that was one way to look at it. So we laid that format out and what that model would have looked like for the last 7 seasons, but also based on the Power 5 conference champions receiving automatic bids, 2 wild cards, and plus an entry, a formal entry for the group of 5. So we laid out those playoff scenarios and those interesting matchups over the last 7 seasons for an 8-team playoff. For the past 2 days, you see 2 videos posted of what a 16-team playoff would have looked like in 2020 and 2019, and we will continue to post those videos over the next several days. Again, 2020 and 2019, check it out, give it a look, keep an open mind. 2 different ways to do it. Again, the college football playoff rankings is going to mean more Power 5 teams, more name brands, more teams that we're used to seeing and watching. You would have entries by Michigan and Auburn and those kind of programs over the past couple of years, not in 2020, but in 2019 in particular, versus allowing more group of 5 teams if we've got a 16-team playoff and we have automatic bids for all the champions, not just the Power 5, all the conference champions. In the next several weeks, I will be releasing a video series with my playoff format, but that's got to be preceded by my scheduling fix, because you can't truly fix the playoff without fixing the scheduling. The scheduling broken both in conference and out of conference. We've discussed that many times here, but for many of you who have not been watching me for years and years and years, it's been a long time since I released my scheduling fix. So we will do that out of conference, in conference. All right. At the bottom of the screen, you see the crawl to shop Amazon. Just don't shop Amazon. Use the link that we provide in the description section of any of the videos. Go to the description section of any of the videos. I would expect that the next time you shop Amazon, ding, voice of college football should come to mind. I say it here all the time. I'll take your calls in just a second. And you would grab the Amazon link that we provide. Do your Amazon shopping using the link. You would help us build the channel. And it's not similar to a Super Chat or a Venmo or a PayPal, anything like that. You're not contributing anything extra. The money goes to Amazon. The Amazon portion comes to us. Therefore, it's not an extra penny out of your pocket. Same shopping experience. Shop Amazon. All right. And do it again using the link that we provide. All right. Patreon. Going to get together with my Patreons. They're actually patrons, I guess. It's Patreon patrons. My voice of college football community. Our voice of college football community. We're going to get together this Thursday or Friday. It's going to take me a while to figure out which is going to be better for my situation this week. But Thursday or Friday for a big powwow. We'll talk college football. Of course, we'll have a good time doing that. But also talk about the platform and what we want to do there for you. It is 16 or 17 cents a day. I didn't do the math exactly to the T, so it's between 16 and 17 cents a day there on Patreon. So please join us there, $5 a month. And exclusive live streams, watch parties, predictions during the season, betting advice from Steve Merrill, Pro Sports Info, and it will expand from there with an insider look that's been requested, an insider look to MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. So there you go. I provided a little bit of that, but we'll be doing more in that area. And depending on your requests and your suggestions, more on Patreon. All right. Let me get to the live chat. Let me get to the calls. Of course, subscribe. If you're watching right now and you haven't subscribed and you've been watching for a long time and enjoy the content, I would ask that you would just subscribe. Hit that bell for the notifications, you know, when we're going live that way. Or if you're stumbling upon us for the first time, stumble no more. Gain your footing. You've arrived at the Voice of College Football for what we hope to be the best discussion, debate, and analysis across college football anywhere, consistently. Do we hit our mark every day? No, we don't. But that's the aim. That's the mission. That is the goal every day. Best discussion, debate, and analysis right here. And you can be part of it. Check out the videos. If you're finding us for a first time or have only seen a couple videos, check out the videos. Check out the analysis. And then we hope that you will subscribe. And, of course, smash that like button. I would guess that our like to view ratio is less than 10%. And I don't think that the people out there, based on the comments, that they enjoy the videos any less than they comment back to me. And the feedback's great. The feedback's awesome. And much of that has to do with you, meaning our conversations are enjoyable and insightful for people to listen to. So they like the conversation here. They like the discussion, the debate, the analysis. Hit the like button then. We appreciate that. All right. Somebody called a couple seconds ago. Give me a call, 860-325-3687. Of course, we've got NFL Conference Championship games this weekend. I saw a chart the other day by our buddy Kalen Jones on Twitter. And he had posted all the, I don't know if he took this from another site or whether he compiled this himself. He's a rather young man, and it must have taken him a little bit of research if he did, as opposed to somebody like me listing all the quarterbacks who started all the conference championship games. So each year it went, 1966, it started with the first Super Bowl. 1966, 1967, the four quarterbacks. That would have been pretty easy for me to do. I actually had to correct him on a couple. Danny White, in particular, 1982, started the NFC Championship game. He had Gary Hogeboom listed as the Cowboys starter, but he came in after Dexter Manley flattened Danny White, unfortunately, with a concussion in the second quarter. It's almost like this meant something to me, the way I'm reciting it. But Danny White got flattened with a concussion. Dexter Manley was the culprit. And Gary Hogeboom came in and played rather well, but threw two crucial interceptions. So again, we've got a championship game weekend in the NFL. And for NFL fans, this is the culmination of what it's all about. In a sense, almost more important than the Super Bowl. Bills, Chiefs, and Packers, Buccaneers. Which I would expect on a normal year that the Bucs-Packers would have been the late game because it's the more star-studded game, of course, and the more legendary game. But maybe because of the temperatures in Green Bay, they flip-flopped them and wanted to play that game during daylight. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, who's on the line?
Well, I think Danny White lost 3 straight NFC Championship games, if I'm not mistaken, right, Mark Rogers?
Yes, the team did.
3 straight?
The team lost 3 straight championship games.
Sorry, yeah.
It's never a big fan. It's never a big fan of quarterback records. I get it. I would either want the quarterback record to be published for everyone to see, but then that needs to be published for every player. Every player was on the team. Every player should have a record then. Okay. I just don't get the quarterback record. Seems kind of stupid to me.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, they're always judged on wins and losses. What do we say about the quarterback? They either get too much credit or too much blame.
Yeah, and so again, I don't want to communicate that the wrong way. I like looking at the quarterback record statistics, but I want to see that for every player.
Sure, yeah. It's not like the tight end is judged the same way, or the linebacker is somebody says he's 0-4 or 0-3 or what have you.
Yep.
I hear you. I wanted to give you a call. A couple things. I was going to comment on the Buckeye talk the other day. because I said that Marcus Freeman would be a big hire. And, I found it interesting that, Notre Dame went out there and gave all the dough to hire him. I had heard that he might have been going to LSU. Didn't one of your LSU guys say that he might be heading there?
Well, the LSU guy that we have on said it, but also I saw that all over the place. I went online and looking at Marcus Freeman, and I saw LSU as, legitimate interest both ways, both directions. Yep.
Right. Yeah, I would have loved to have had him at Ohio State, but I think it would have. I don't know if he would have been able to run the defense just by himself, just for the simple fact that I think it would have been like a co-defensive coordinator with Gary Combs. And I know that some of the Buckeye fans kind of came down on Gary Combs the way the defense played this year, but I think that you obviously have to look at everything. And I know the guys talked about this in the chat, that you didn't have an off season, you didn't have a full season for that matter, to help develop some of the younger players. So I think it is tough to judge him on this season running the defense. And, again, I think if they'd have brought in Freeman, it would have kind of almost been like a co-defensive coordinator type situation. Like they had a few years ago when they had Grinch, and then they had, I believe, Shiano at the same time in 2018, if I'm not mistaken. And then, now Grinch is in Oklahoma and doing really good things there as their defensive coordinator. So, I think that probably would have been a stumbling block. I don't know. Is that something that the guy from the Buckeye Talk had mentioned?
What was the stumbling block?
Yeah, that he wanted to run the defense by himself, and it would have been, if he'd have come to Ohio State, he would have had to be maybe more or less a co-defensive coordinator with Combs.
Yeah, if these guys are saying it, then certainly they don't make comments like that rashly. So I don't remember them stating that, but if that's what they said, you're telling me that that's what they stated.
No, I thought that I didn't know if that was something that they had mentioned. I think that would have been from my perspective. I don't think they could have gone out and hired him and brought him in unless it was more or less in a co-defensive coordinator role. That's what I'm wondering if that's something that Noon or Ferdinand or Steve Hellwagon had mentioned in their comments. I didn't hear them say that. I thought that was something that might have been a problem, though. Yeah,
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I would think that any time that that would be proposed, that would be a huge conversation piece to understand exactly how that's going to work. Because for me, somebody would have to sit down and explain to me exactly how that's going to work, because I think you're headed for trouble with that situation.
Yeah. Well, I think he's an excellent coach. I think he's going to do a really good job. Like they were saying, I think that you kind of use that as like a stepping stone type situation, because you become a coordinator at a major school, and then eventually you look to maybe take a job at a smaller school and kind of build up your resume. Usually, it seems like that's the most logical steps from most coaches.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Now, are you? You said that you're going to do some coverage of the National Signing Day.
Oh yeah, we always do. We are always here all day during National Signing Day.
Did you? I did want to say that the Buckeyes are. Yeah, I know that was probably mentioned in your Buckeye Talk, but they're in on a linebacker out of California, and they're still trying to get that defensive lineman out of Washington. I tell you, if they get both in this recruiting class, man, I don't know if that quite catches Alabama as the number one recruiting class, but I think it'd be real close to see if they get both of those guys. And I think that puts them in really close position to Alabama to finish with the number one recruiting class, which, they've been close in the past, but never quite able to catch them.
Yeah, which of course on the field probably doesn't matter, but in terms of perception, in terms of what people talk about, what people look at, and of course, when you've got a number one next to your name versus a number two, even if it's razor thin, even if it proves 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now that the number two class was much better than the number one class, it's still nice to have the number one next to your name just for the perception standpoint.
Did you see that? I mean, usually, what do they say? The teams that have won the national championship over the last, 8 or 9 years, Mark, have averaged a recruiting class of somewhere in, the top 4 or 5 or something like that.
Oh yeah.
If I'm not mistaken. I think I saw the stat out there for that. I don't know if you'd seen that and what that average was at, but I think it was somewhere within. You had to average somewhere, I believe, within the top 5.
Yeah, I've seen that statistic all over the place. Yep, I've seen it comprised a number of different ways, and it always comes out about the same.
Yeah, I think that, and that's just the bottom line. I think if you're recruiting in the top 5, you're going to be in the top 5. So, I mean, usually it translates. Like I said, we've seen some exceptions in the past where teams just don't win because even when they do have the talent, but there's no doubt if you're going to win, you better average somewhere in that neighborhood, unless you maybe pop up with a transitional type quarterback. I think the 1 year Auburn won with Cam Newton, I don't think that they were recruiting at a really, really high level. I think that's the one exception, maybe within the last 10 years.
Probably. I can't think of anybody else that would be an exception, though. Actually, to a certain extent, Clemson, depending on how high you're going up the rankings, would be a bit of an exception with their first championship team. So that was 2016.
Okay.
So those classes were 13, 14, 15, and 16, and to a certain extent with fifth-year seniors, 2012. And they had some classes in the high teens on that roster.
Okay, yeah, I agree. Yeah, because they recruited much, much better with the 2018 team that won 2 years ago. That's for sure.
All right, Dave, I'm going to pick up some of these other calls.
All right,
I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Press 1 to start.
All right.
The call will start at the
Get to some more calls here. By the way, before I get to this call, I may leave this comment up there. This is my favorite comment of the day. It's going to be difficult for it to be surpassed. True GA champion. Joke of the day, the voice of college football. All right, if that's the joke of the day, we better leave that up there. And we've got a class act on the line, of course, there from True GA champion, who joins us for the live streams, apparently. I know he comments to some of the videos, so he must enjoy what we do. So if that's of amusement to him, that's a good thing. So we can keep that there for a second. All right, MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Stephen from Omaha.
Hey, Stephen. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. What's going on?
What do you think about the things going on in Texas and both Tennessee with the coaching issues / with Mark Stoops being accepted and declined at Texas?
Mark Stoops accepted and declined for.
Or it's not. Well, it's not. He wasn't declined, but he had an offer, but then it was rescinded from somebody at Texas. But Steve Sarkisian wanted him at Texas. And so I was just wondering what your thoughts on that.
Well, I don't have any thoughts on it necessarily because we've had a few Texas writers on here. I hadn't come across that information. So you're saying that Mark Stoops was offered the head coaching position at Texas?
No, he was offered a defensive line coach or a linebackers coach at Texas to fill out Steve Sarkisian's coaching staff.
And then they rescinded the offer.
Yeah, they rescinded the offer that day or the next day. And so the news down in Texas, I guess, or in the SEC more or less. But I was just curious about how you thought about that.
Well, I judge that similar to what I would judge any situation like that in any field, that if you really need to be confident and secure and committed to your decision. If you're going to be offering a job to somebody, that's an important thing because we're talking about affecting families and money and location and living circumstances and employment. And so for anybody out there that's been ever offered a job, formally offered a job, and then it gets rescinded, that is a mistake made by the employer or the would-be employer. So I see that. I did not, was not aware of that situation, didn't see that come across anywhere in my reading. So that would be, unless somebody would uncover some other facts involved in the situation, the circumstances that would cause them to do that. I just don't think that's a way to conduct business.
Yeah, I would say that I don't know what the whole situation is, but I've been looking on the website and YouTube, and people have been talking about it for a bit, so I don't know how that situation played out. But what's been going on in Tennessee, do you think that Tennessee has an issue with how they've been handling the situation so far, or do you think they'll get that changed around with the new AD they hired?
Well, I'll finish up by the Texas situation just to say that we are going to have some Texas talk on here either Monday or Tuesday. I don't remember when we've got our Texas guys scheduled, so we'll look into that Mark Stoops situation. In terms of Tennessee, it's easy to judge Tennessee on, well, first of all, since Philip Fulmer hung it up as head coach in 2007, obviously they've made poor hires, or they've made a hire in Lane Kiffin that just took off. So they were not handling the head coaching situation well in terms of the ultimate choice. And then we saw most recently when they hired Jeremy Pruitt that was botched in a number of directions. Greg Schiano, Mike Leach, they had some bad things happen to them in regards to the Schiano situation. They found themselves in a bad PR place, but they didn't handle it well. The Mike Leach pursuit was, again, it was another situation in which they just continued to make bad choices and bad moves that got out there and made them look not as though that they really knew how to handle a head coaching search. But now they've got a new man in charge, and he's only been on the job for about 4 days. So I would think based on how he's handled the UCF doesn't have a license for winning in college football, and they have in the past in spurts, but they've been very successful under Danny White. And he, of course, built a decent basketball program, or had a hand in building the basketball program there. So he's got a good track record coming in. He has stated that he didn't necessarily have, or the university did not have, names that they knew for sure, that they were waiting, that they were truly taking it step by step, meaning hire the AD, have it be his baby. You got to have the AD is responsible for the head coach, that they were truly going to hire that AD and put all the focus on that hire first, and then allow him to hire the guy that he's comfortable with and thinks is the guy. So I think based on the time that it has taken since Danny White was named the athletic director, that they're truly going about it in that way.
Do you think that I know I've heard some rumors going around that they want people want Lane Kiffin back as the head coach? Do you think that's a smart idea, or do you think he should stay at Ole Miss?
Is that a smart idea for him, or is it a smart idea for Tennessee?
Tennessee to hire Lane Kiffin.
I would be very hesitant to hire a coach who dismissed us so easily at another time, which would be, of course, Lane Kiffin 7-8 years ago. So Tennessee, I would think that there are other candidates. I don't think that it's not a situation like the Texas job's open and Urban Meyer might be available, and if he says yes, then you just hire him. You don't even think about it. You don't even go through a search. I don't think Lane Kiffin is that level of hire. He's not that level of hire. So if I'm Tennessee, I go in other directions. I would consider Lane Kiffin, but he would not be a slam dunk hire for me. I don't think he's proven anywhere that he's at least on the Power 5 level, he hasn't, to be that type of coach. He's a very interesting and intriguing hire, who of course, from the offensive standpoint, is phenomenal. But no, I think that there are other coaches out there that could be interested. The two that come to mind that are running their way up the group of 5 ranks are Billy Napier and Jamie Chadwell.
Do you, with the way that the college landscape is, and where you have kind of where you have people kind of dropping out, like for this year, and this is kind of a weird year, do you think there'll be more dropouts if in the regular season if things aren't going a certain way for certain teams, or do you think that they'll just happen at the end of the season where if they plan on going to bowl games, do you think you have players just drop out at the bowl games, or do you think that'll be an issue moving forward?
Well, I don't think it's going to be a mass issue, but we're just going to see an increase in it, because anytime something like this starts and players see the benefit of it for other players and they don't see the downfall or the negative aspect of it, then they're going to continue to do it. And basically, I don't think it's so much that the bowl games or exhibitions are viewed by the players as being exhibitions as much as it's that there's an obvious separation between the regular season typically ends the first weekend of December, and most of these bowl games are played after Christmas time. So there's 4 weeks, and the players just think, okay, I can be preparing for the NFL draft. This bowl game doesn't mean that much. But at the same time, as I stated before, they're playing, most of them are playing, if you want to consider meaningless anything that doesn't contribute to a championship, that doesn't have impact on a championship, 75 or 80% of them in that range are playing meaningless games for the last 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks of the season, depending on the program, of course. So they're going to somebody's going to enlighten them to that if they're missing bowl games because they are quote unquote meaningless, then why would a Michigan State player play the last game of the season against Rutgers when their team is 5-6 and Rutgers is 3-8? What distinguishes that game? So I would just think that this would continue. There would be, let's say, put it this way, depending on the injury of that particular player, and I'm not talking about an injury that's keeping them out, but an injury that they're concerned about, that they're playing with, combined with their own information that they're getting back about their status for the NFL draft. Because we know if you're Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence, your leverage is so much greater than if you're projected to be a 5th or 6th round pick. If you're projected to be a 5th or 6th round pick and you need more tape and to put more plays on tape, then you're going to continue from a business standpoint to do what you need to do.
Right. Well, I just thought I asked you that question because I talked to somebody else and they think that the opt-outs are going to be more of an issue moving forward as years and years progress, and they think that they have a feeling that that at one point they're going to one team's going to be 1-4 when they're supposed to be really good, and there's going to be a player that's just going to opt out and say, "I'm done with the season because we're not heading in the right direction." And
sure,
that'll be they think that will be the case moving forward. So I just wanted to see what your perspective on that was.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's going to be a mass exodus, but it's going to increase. All right, I'm going to take some of these other calls. I appreciate the call.
Thank you very much. You have a good day.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we're going to have some Texas talk on here either Monday or Tuesday. I forget when that is scheduled. And Mark Stoops to Texas as defensive line coach. I'll have to ask about that. We got a little bit of a crowd online, but we've got a lot of calls. So keep calling in. I apologize for those of you who have waited. All right, let's get to some other comments. I don't want to clog up the line with the little joke there. Thank you, David. Appreciate that. I commented to somebody the other day, and this is whether you see this as meaningful or legit or arrogant, whatever you want to say. I didn't come up with that name. I didn't come up with the voice of college football. I had at least 8 or 10 people make that comment to me through the comment section. And me being the extremely bright person that I am, it took me about 8 people or 10 people for it to click and say, you know what? I'm going to run with that. And I also want to emphasize the dual meaning of that, because I think that this best works because we all have a voice. So, voice of college football, yes, I'm going to run with that. It's a great name. It's a great tag that a number of people have given me in particular, but this only works because of the discussion that we have here. So you have a voice, and your voice is very important. And as you can tell, and a lot of people notice, I give a lot of time to all of you on the phone, and that's part of the process. The part of the process is that we enjoy the discussion. We want to dive deep into matters, and sometimes you can't take, like you'll see other shows, not necessarily online, but you'll see other shows that are college football related. One comes to mind where basically you're going to get your 20 to 30 seconds, and then the host really doesn't answer the question, doesn't get that deep into it, just says, yeah, I like Tennessee this year. I think they're going to be improved. And then that's the end of it. And they really don't tell you anything. And they could know nothing because they're basically giving you a 10 or 15 second answer. Then they move on to the next caller, next caller, next caller. No, you've got a voice. I've got a voice. And of course, the different beat writers and broadcasters we bring on, they've got a voice. We've got voices all over the place. Voices on college football. So, David, thank you so much for that. Exactly. But that's fine. There is nobody that is worth anything that is either on this platform or others that doesn't receive some level of criticism. So that comes with it. The RodFarva's here. Who wins today? He's got Chiefs Packers. So we would have a rematch of Super Bowl I, Chiefs Packers. And we've only had a few rematches in Super Bowls. There haven't been that many. Not that many. Cowboys Steelers 3 times. Dolphins Redskins. Cowboys Bills. Patriots Eagles. And I'm not going to continue because it'll just waste a lot of time. The Cowboys Steelers was the first one that repeated 76-79. Then they met for a third time in 96. Cowboys Bills back to back, of course. All right. And certainly this, for whatever reason, was either the first or second NFL season that I didn't make predictions. After, man, that's a long time. 1979 was the first year I made NFL predictions. Every game, 1979 through like 2018. But it just completely dropped off the map in the last couple of years. The RodFarva is looking for 8 teams in the playoff. That makes sense. The RodFarva, I've not seen Joel Klatt's plan. I've seen that people have brought it up to me, and I understand it's 12 teams, 12 or 14 teams. And I very much respect what Joel Klatt has to say. He's tremendous. I don't like his format, though, automatically. I don't have to see or hear anything else from it. I would love to have the discussion with him because buys don't work. That is the one point before the rest of the points that I'm trying to pound into people's heads. Buys do not work. Here are the reasons buys don't work. Okay. Let's say we went to 6 teams, and this applies for any number that results in buys. So this could be 6 teams, 10 teams, 12 teams, 14 teams. So understand the math works if you've got 4, 8, 16, 32. Anytime you see like a tennis tournament, something like that, you typically see 4, 8, 16, 32 because everybody needs to play the same numbers and it matches up perfectly in a bracket to where everybody plays the same amount and it's fair. The reason buys are acceptable in the NFL is because those teams earned the buys. Those teams earned the buys based on a schedule that is like everybody else's schedule. So everybody's basically playing the same schedule or very similar schedules. Therefore, the bye is clearly earned by the teams that earn byes in the NFL. Different in college football. So you've got a very limited playoff. You only have 8 teams, 16 teams, whichever way you want to go. If you've got 6, let's say, apply your 16 playoff to any season. Start this season, go back 2019, 18, 17, 16. I guarantee you that you cannot come up with a clear delineation to give 2 teams byes. It doesn't work. And this is the huge, enormous advantage you give those teams. Number one, they obviously have no risk of losing. They can't lose. So that's the main advantage. You are giving these teams a free win. Okay. Number 2, it's the wear and tear. The wear and tear factor of all the other teams. They have to play a supreme. Look at what Ohio State did against Clemson. Look at the toll that it took on them in particular. But we could go down through history. Obviously, you're playing another team that's one of the top 5 or 10 teams in the country. The toll that it puts on your team from the wear and tear standpoint. Okay. Number 3, the likelihood of injury. You could have your best player get hurt. You could have 3 players get knocked out. The injury factor is going to be, to some degree, whether it's just guys getting nicked up or it's guys getting completely knocked out of the game and missing then the next game. There's a huge advantage. Then here's another advantage that nobody talks about. Strategy, approach, preparation. If you're a team with a bye and these 2 other teams are playing and there's a full few weeks before they play, because we're separating the regular season from the first round of the playoffs, okay? There's weeks and weeks and weeks between the end of the regular season, the conference championship games, and that first round playoff game. That team that's waiting to play one of those 2 teams, they can prepare all that time for both of those teams, for all that time, for a month. Plus, they then are sitting there waiting and preparing for those teams, while that team that wins the first round game only has that short period of time to then prepare for the team that received the bye. It's just, it doesn't work at all. We could go through each season. I may even do a video series on that and say, we're going to give byes, 2 byes. We're going to go a 16 playoff. We're going to give 2 byes. We're going to go through every season. I'm going to show you why this would not work. All right. Thanks for waiting here. You're on the line. Oh, it's David. Waiting so patiently.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I was listening to what you said, and it really just makes a lot of sense. And I watched both of your streams about the college football playoffs, the things that you explained and recommended and pointed out, and it makes a lot of sense. And, you know, I think as college football fans, all of us have different views, right? And maybe one doesn't make more sense than the other. Maybe one holds more weight than the other. But in the end of the day, it's all going to be subjective, right? Because that's the point of view that you hold in your head. And I think what you just recommended or mentioned, the injuries are something you need to be cognizant of, because you don't want guys getting hurt. It's player safety, right?
Yep.
So what I really wanted to ask you is something I've been meaning to ask you, and you may be not able to reflect on it a whole lot, but I wanted to get your take on it. When we saw the mass migration of players into the portal, do you think that college head football coaches play favorites on their team based on personality, behavioral capabilities, versus saying, okay, here's my 4 running backs, and you might have a running back at 3 or 4 that really can, you know, take it to the house, or in beast mode, versus them saying, well, I like this guy better because he's my buddy, blah, 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 blah. You see where I'm going?
Oh, yeah.
Do you think that happens? And that's all I'm asking you.
Well, 2 experiences come to mind. And I think if we both sat here, we could come up with dozens of experiences. But I know that there were several times when I worked at ESPN and other places, but most notably at ESPN, where I would get assigned to a project, or somebody would just, where it wasn't some formal designation on a project. It was somebody who had a project and could just needed some help and needed 3 or 4 people to work with them. And most of those projects involve technology. I'm a technological moron. And I would say to them, you know, why are you including me in this project? And they would say, just like working with you, and know that you'll do your best and you have A, B, and C skills. But people work with people that they enjoy, that they like. I also think that there's just natural, we all have natural bias. And I saw it not necessarily directed toward me in a positive way or a negative way, but playing on different sports teams, I saw it where coaches had favorites, and it wasn't necessarily based on that particular player being a better player than somebody else. Just for whatever reason, they just liked them. And I saw that repeatedly playing just the limited amount of sports that I played up through high school. So the higher you go through the ranks, then we're talking about college football, where there's a lot of money on the line and all that. And then obviously in the NFL, I would hope and think it only makes sense that would lessen as you go through the ranks. But I just think we all have bias, for as much as we want to eliminate it. And I said this the other night in explaining something, that I do my very best to eliminate it in everything that I do here. But I will never argue with anybody who says, Mark, you're biased, because I'll say, everybody's biased. We all
Mark, how are you not supposed to be?
You know, I do my best to be neutral when I look at numbers. I look at 2 teams. Even, you know, I took the example the other day, like there was this argument over 2001 Miami versus 2013 Florida State. I could care less about either. I could care less about either team. I have absolutely no attachment toward either team. But if I'm going to shoot a video, which I may, because this seems to be a good debate between those 2 teams, I will have some kind of bias just based on my memory, just based on looking at the numbers and what numbers I favor over other numbers. And the bias won't be because I like one of them. It'll just be based on my experience and how I view things. So there's going to be some slight bias there, and I won't even know which one. I may not internally not even know which way that bias is leaning in that case, because I could care less about either one, but there will be some bias there. So I believe that, if you're hiring and interviewing 2 people and they have the same qualifications, and one person doesn't necessarily do anything wrong in terms of their personality, in terms of their approach, the conversation, they're fine, they're okay. But somebody, you just hit it off with them, you're going to internally view their resume differently. I just think
Yeah. Because you have that connection, right?
Yes.
And you know what, like, even going back to what you just brought up, the 2001 Miami team, 2013 FSU, I was watching that, and he'll segue this into the wholesome one, where he was saying, hey, Miami is just now, in the last 2 years, getting training tables. Man, food is down to a science. Training is down to a science. And if they're just now getting there, it's nuts. And so I didn't mean to pull you off the direct subject, but it's nuts that I don't think you can compare teams 20 years apart in these different eras, because that athletes have gone through an evolution of how they prepare themselves, how they train, how they work out, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, I'll leave that alone, because that's another topic. But I just seen like, and I'll bring this up and I'll let you go. Remember when Auburn had Cadillac Williams and they had another running back? Can't remember his name.
Ronnie Brown.
Ronnie Brown. And then sitting behind those two was another guy that did very well in the NFL.
Brandon Jacobs.
Brandon Jacobs, yes, sir. So if you're the head coach, Mark, and you're looking at this three, would you let those three get equal touches, or would you say, well, he's a junior, he's a senior, he's put his time in the program, so seniority prevails and he deserves this moment? I mean, I don't know. I'm asking.
Well, I think if you're in that situation with three guys that are that talented, your first hope is that they all do something different, that they're different types of backs. So you're more inclined to play one when you need pass protection because he's your best pass protector. Somebody else is a better pass receiver. Somebody else is a better inside runner, outside runner. So you're hoping that their skill sets complement each other and they're not all the same guy. But at worst case scenario, they're all the same guy. Most likely it's a little bit of both. You're not going to get a perfect combination of all these skill sets being distributed between the three of them, but you're also not going to get they're all exactly the same guy that can do the same things well. You've got some kind of combination to work with there. And therefore the down and distance, the game situation, what kind of plays you're running, dictate how you use them, number one. I would think number two, and I think we saw this most notably with Master Teague and Trey Sermon, is that I think that a good coach has a feel for the game. And you understand who may play better against that defense, and then you see in the first quarter that somebody is playing better. And I think there's a balance to be struck between just saying, okay, you know what, we've got three tremendous running backs, but this one guy is a tiny little bit better based on my evaluation than the other two. So he's just the starting running back and the other two are sitting on the bench. Well, I don't think that's smart. And he gets 25 carries and the other two get none. But you also understand that running backs get into a groove. They want to work up a lather. They want to wear on a defense a little bit. So you play them in spurts and you just don't yank them in and out. I think it's pretty it seems to be pretty effective to run a particular runner, at least for a drive. And I would say even consecutive drives before you say, okay, he's gotten beat up a little bit or whatever. And then again, you have different sizes of backs. Tom Landry used to say, Tony Dorsett, I'm going to make sure that he plays a long, long time because he's a little scat back. And even though I could run him 30 times, I'm going to run him 15 to 18. And Tony Dorsett didn't like that, but Tony Dorsett played for 13 years, as opposed to, Jerome Bettis or Eric Dickerson, who you could just pound away. And in the fourth quarter, it took a toll on the defense.
Sure. And, if you think about it, Mark, like Trey Sermon's got his comeuppance when at the end of the season, like he just came out of nowhere like a madman, like just he was a bulldozer. And man, like I was really happy for him because when he came from Oklahoma, he had some good stats, but not like what he did in those last three games. I was like, man. And I was sad to see that he got hurt his first carry against Alabama.
Yeah, it would not have made a difference in the final, or maybe in the final score, but not the result of the game. But it would have been interesting to see how well he would have done. Because Master Teague had a decent game. He basically runs to a hole and he slams it in there, and he's got no wiggle or no cut explosion.
Yeah, so all good, man. And that's all the only thing I was asking. I just I've just seen too many players, like when they get frustrated, like I'm not getting the clock that I need, or if they ask them to bounce to different positions, especially on defense, and then after 3 years I've done everything you've asked me to do. Can can I play at one position and show you what I can do? They go in the transfer portal. A lot of times, that team they go to, they may not start again, so they're left in the same scenario, which is not a good one. But that's all I was saying.
I think in particular at the quarterback position that there was a day and time in which this transfer portal would have worked out for these quarterbacks a little bit better, because they would have seen, they're typically looking at a situation which they think they can vie for a starting position. But this quarterback play at the high school level and with all these camps, that these quarterbacks come into college football prepared to play, and it's difficult to find a place in Power 5 college football where you're not going to have some competition for the job. So these guys that are running from competition are generally going to find it somewhere.
I know, like, you can leave this college and go to another college, but where do you think the guys came from? We just left. It's like, it's madness. It's madness, because I think you're absolutely right. Everybody wants to play. I got it. But at some point in time, if you don't face up to competition and elevate your level of play, then what happens? Anyway, Mark, if you want to continue to talk about it, that's fine. But I feel like other people may be trying to get on the phone, and I've taken up enough of your time.
Well, David, I always enjoy the conversation. Absolutely. You know that. So
Yes,
I appreciate the support. Appreciate all that you do, man.
And I'll just continue to sit there and watch, and I love the show, man. Take
Awesome.
care, Mark, and have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, David. It's our guy, David Knight, Notre Dame fan, and tremendous supporter of what we're doing here. A lot of comments about Mike Stoops than Mark Stoops. I agree. I have stated many times that Mark Stoops is doing a tremendous job at Kentucky. He recognized when he got there that he could not go south and compete with all the rest of the powers in the SEC for players to try to pull them up to Kentucky. You still go down there. Of course, there's just so much talent that if you're getting the 50th best player in the state of Florida, he's still a really, really good player. And of course, if you're, this is the thing that gets lost in all these metrics and rankings of players and ratings of players in the high school ranks. I'm sure that those ratings are more accurate today than they've ever been. The scouting just gets better, the technology, the communication, all that is just increased. And if they're good at what they do, and they certainly are, they're constantly looking for ways to be better. And they should be doing some self-analysis to say, you know what, let's go back to this class 5 years ago. Did we truly evaluate that correctly? Who did we miss on, and why? Sometimes you're just going to miss because a player gets hurt, obviously, but also players just don't show up and other guys mature. We're talking about getting evaluated as a 17-year-old football player. Guys just, man, for some dudes, that's their ceiling. They're playing their best football, and they're not going to grow too much more after that, and they've pretty much hit their ceiling. For other guys, that's just the beginning of the maturation, the explosion of their talents, their skills, their abilities, and their body frame. So it's a tough deal to try to figure out who's going to be a 16 or 17. You know, they're scouting these guys as freshmen and sophomore years. That sophomore year is a big year. And looking at 16-year-olds, trying to project what's he going to be at 21 when he's a junior or senior here, playing at the college level. That's a difficult task. But the point I was making is that, we can look at ratings and rankings all we want, and they are very meaningful. In mass, they are so meaningful. But really good coaches like a Mark Stoops at Kentucky, at a Paul Christ at Wisconsin, they go find a guy that's lowly recruited, lowly ranked, but they see something. They can project. They can compare what they've seen in the past out of players A, B, and C that were ranked really low, but we saw these qualities in these previous players, they all worked out. Anytime you're in the evaluation business and analysis business, then you have to store all those experiences and all those metrics that you've experienced in the past. And if they repeat, they repeat. And I'm sure that that's part of the success of some of these programs that don't rank as high as what their record turns out to be, and Kentucky would be one of those. But the point being that, yes, they still have to go south because there's just so much talent in the South. But Kentucky also found the opportunity to go to Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Michigan and get some of their best players there. And that had not been done previously. Shawn believes that something's on the verge there at Oklahoma of something special. And I would not disagree with that. I think that Oklahoma, I think it's intriguing to see what has happened to the defensive side of the ball under Alex Grinch. He did that amazing work at Washington State. Basically, Alex Grinch took a Washington State defense that was bottom 10 to 15 in the nation, and he made it a top 25 defense. Now, was it truly a top 25 defense? Maybe not quite. If they would have played better teams outside the Pac-12, sure. Washington State always plays a weak non-conference schedule, and the Pac-12 is arguably the worst of the conferences. So was he producing truly top 25 defenses? No. But statistically, he was taking the same players against the same schedule and lifting them from a bottom 10 or 15 defense to a top 25 defense. So they were probably a top 40 defense, which is still a huge, enormous improvement. Then he goes to Ohio State, which, again, I've got to wonder what was going on between he and Schiano and the decisions made at Ohio State, because he was not statistically, based on the talent at Ohio State, not successful there. So he didn't forget how to coach or has an inability to coach players inside the state of Ohio. He then went to Oklahoma, and we see what he's doing there. The only thing I want to see out of this defense, and it's too bad this year that we didn't get to see it because, number one, no non-conference games of consequence, and then they played a bowl game against a Florida team that was depleted in terms of personnel, that I wanted to see that Oklahoma team defensively go up against other teams outside the Big 12. That's what I wanted to see. But they are so much better. It's crazy that this Oklahoma team was going to playoffs and winning the Big 12, giving up ridiculous amounts of points and yardage. And then if you watched them play, you could see why they gave up ridiculous points and yardage, because they constantly blew coverages and didn't have a whole lot of investment in tackling. Missed assignments all over the place. For whatever reason, Alex Grinch must know how to put players in position, and he also must know how to teach them to read the offense and play within the scheme. So they've almost eliminated all these missed assignments and blown coverages. Plus, he's motivated guys to invest in tackling. Because watching that Oklahoma defense this past season, and even going back the year before, they were better. They were showing signs. Just don't watch the LSU game. But, man, I want to see them play. I don't know who they've got non-conference. I believe it's Nebraska. Don't know that that's going to tell us a whole lot. But, yeah, Oklahoma. Interesting. Len Henry. So I love this because I know that there are folks out there that unfortunately aren't able to catch our live streams, but then they watch them after the fact, and maybe they're just not the type person that wants to comment. So Len Henry here. Welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. It's great to have you live. I usually listen to the replays while working the third shift. There you go. What I hope to do here in the next couple of weeks is release a live stream schedule that you can all count on throughout the rest of the off season. Then then we'll reevaluate once college football kicks off in August, at the end of August, and we'll reevaluate what looks like to be the best live schedule during the season. But between now and the kickoff of the season, of course, I would like to give you a schedule so you can count on it. So that schedule at this point is definitely going to be Wednesday at 2 o'clock Eastern Time, Ohio State Buckeyes live. Wednesday at 6 Eastern, Florida State Seminoles live. And then we're happy and very excited to be launching a new version of our call-in show Wednesdays at 8 o'clock Eastern Time, and you will see a difference. So we hope to pull that together in about 2 weeks. So then the rest of the schedule I need to work out, because it seems like I want to catch different viewers at different times. So maybe we'll do a late night, we'll do a midnight show once a week somewhere. We'll do a noon show. We've got the one with Pigskin Pete on college football coast to coast Mondays at noon Eastern Time. And then I'd like to move it around a little bit. Instead of saying, let's say we're going Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 8 o'clock Eastern Time, I would like to move the show around a little bit and hopefully catch just about everybody. Although at the same time, that may not be good for viewership, because I think all of you are in a pattern. Most of you are in a pattern based on work and family obligations where if I was here every night, let's say at 7 o'clock Eastern Time, then I'd probably build up a bigger audience. And we're seeing the diehards on here right now because, man, we exploded with numbers around Christmas time going past New Year's. Man, we had one live stream. This was after the Ohio State Clemson game with almost 900 people online, and we were consistently getting 550, 600 people online for a span of about 7-8 shows there. So I would love to. I know it's the off season, but I would still love to pull people in here and get these numbers up. And I appreciate everybody that's on here right now, including Julian Smith. Nate Beast, Notre Dame fan. Spencer Radler, going to be a junior. I believe he's going to be a redshirt sophomore, correct? Anybody out there? I thought he redshirted, or did he throw passes in 2019? But I thought he could still redshirt. I think he didn't play enough games, right? And then he was a redshirt freshman this year, going to be a redshirt sophomore this year. I might be wrong. Nate, I've asked myself the same question. How does Bama keep hiring these pro football coaches? It's got to be a combination of Nick Saban respect and money. RodFarva, I hope Radler has matured. He rubbed me the wrong way in the quarterback QB1 show on Netflix. Did not see that. Dalton says Tate Martell rubbed me the wrong way. That doesn't surprise me based on what I've heard out of Tate. That's right, Nate. We've got FCS games being played next month. So we can get into that a little bit. Okay, it's going to be a redshirt junior next season. Okay. RodFarva, the most depressing time of year is approaching when there's no football and the only thing on TV, basketball and hockey. A lot of drops by the wide receivers at Oklahoma this past season. I'm not saying that I really recall that. I saw Oklahoma play Iowa State. I saw maybe half the game, but I saw the championship game. I saw the Oklahoma State game, saw the Texas game, saw quite a bit of Oklahoma this past year. 28-80-28. Mark Stoops to Texas was supposedly shut down by the UT Boosters. Louis Papp, what do you think of Michigan hiring all these coaches with little or no experience? Well, I got to think that when it comes to defensive coordinator Mike McDonald from the Baltimore Ravens, that there was an obvious recommendation there. Jim Harbaugh, John Harbaugh, Mike McDonald working under John in Baltimore. So I got to think that there's a big recommendation there. John Harbaugh obviously knows his stuff. He's a great football coach, that his brother trusts him, and he had a firsthand evaluation of his work. Running the whole defense is different, of course, and calling the plays on defense rather than coaching a positional unit. Yeah, so Ty Chandler, running back, left Tennessee through the transfer portal, went to North Carolina. Of course, they're looking to replace Javonte Williams and Michael Carter. And now we see Eric Gray and one exceptional player, the linebacker, and I botch his name up all the time because some names that are difficult to pronounce, it's not that they're difficult to pronounce, I just forget how to pronounce them. T-O-O. T-O-O. So he's a tremendous linebacker. He's in the portal, along with, again, as Shawn is mentioning, Eric Gray, who was top 6 in the SEC in rushing this past season. Len, end of the season prediction. Georgia fans will be saying that the 22 season is a championship year. Mike Myrek, good to see you, sir. Go Noles. Shawn likes a 16 playoff. Shawn, I hope you stated that after. No, actually, I hope you stated that before I explained why a 16 playoff doesn't work. It just doesn't. Joseph Forte at North Carolina, sure. Oh, man, Dalton, are you kidding me? That would be phenomenal. I would love to talk college football with a lot of guys, but he may be at the top of the list. I got a lot of respect for Joel Klatt. Yes, I do. We're going to have to get a little larger, I guess. Not that I haven't taken a shot, but the only access I've got to Joel Klatt is through Twitter. Just like you guys could tweet him just the same way that I could. So, Dalton, you know what? If you've ever seen certain people make suggestions in life, and then people make suggestions, and then maybe the smart thing to do is to say, the person that made the suggestion, hey, you run with this. Dalton, if you could get everybody together to just ping Joel Klatt. Then we get him on here. We talk some college football with Joel Klatt. All right, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, reasonable out there.
Hey, how's it going?
Going pretty good. I got two topics I want to approach with you today.
Okay.
Here's the first one. I see you and Ohio State fans out there ever since the national championship game, not necessarily dogging Master Teague, but y'all aren't really showing him a lot of love and respect. And I want to ask why that is. This guy's a really capable back. I mean, he performed really well, honestly, as well as can be expected in the national championship game. He averages well over 5 yards a carry for his entire career. Like, why do y'all just immediately just go to, oh my God, it's just such a huge downgrade from Trey Sermon to Master Teague? I don't think that's true at all.
Okay. Well, apparently the Ohio State coaching staff agrees with you because Master Teague was the starter for most of the season. And then whatever happened, I don't know if he got nicked up, I don't remember, or they just started to give Trey Sermon the ball a little bit more. Well, he did get nicked up in the Big Ten championship game, is why Sermon got more carries, and then obviously he exploded. I would have told you a couple months ago that there wasn't much distinction between the two. In terms of their productivity, you can see obvious differences in their running styles, but in terms of their effectiveness, if anything, I expected, as I stated a number of times, a significant or decided drop-off from J.K. Dobbins with whomever they had, because I didn't see that out of Trey Sermon at Oklahoma, and I did not see that out of Master Teague before this season. The type of productivity of a J.K. Dobbins, who was one of the, let's say, 3 best backs in the nation. So I expected a drop-off. Okay, Teague basically won the job, and they gave him the 15 to 20 carries, and they gave Sermon the 8 to 10 or 12 carries for most of the season before Sermon took over at the end. And they're just different type backs. Sermon has the ability to just do some different things that Teague does not, in terms of shaking a tackler, finding a different cutting lane. So Teague's always going to run to the hole. He's always going to run to where the play is designed. Maybe the only exception I can think of is when Alabama threw him for a loss on a 4th down play because there was just nothing there and it wasn't his fault. And he started to slam it up between the tackles, and there was nothing there.
We just completely got through the line on that one.
Yeah, and he bounced it to the outside, and there was just no way of outrunning the defense. But otherwise, he's going to run it where the play is, and that's to his credit to a certain extent. But Trey Sermon has shown the ability to see cutback lanes. You know, how many times when you watch a college football game, is there a run designed to a certain side of the field, but because everything flows that way, you can just see this massive hole just open up on the other side of the field. Master Teague's not going to.
You're like pulling your hair out, thinking, "Dude, just run, just go that way, go to the right. There's no one there." But he just follows the pile and ends up getting like 1 yard. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
But of course, there are times in which a player chooses to do that. But there's one, even though there's a opportunity for an enormous play, all it takes is one defender, especially against a defense like Alabama, who's quick enough or shoots a gap or gets off that block just in time to wrap that dude up for a 2-yard loss, in which the play should have been run to the hole and gained the 3 yards. So there are pros and cons to both, but Trey Sermon has that ability to break bigger plays because I don't know if he's faster. I can't declare that for sure, but he definitely can cut and change direction and has a wiggle that Teague does not.
Okay. Yeah, I was kind of wondering where that came in, and to be clear, I watched the Ohio State Clemson game, and almost verbatim, I looked over at my dad and I said, this Trey Sermon guy looks like a tank. I mean, I watched him just absolutely just toss people over his shoulders against Clemson that whole game. So I know, how deadly he is. But I guess when I just watched the Alabama game and I had seen a couple or a little bit of Ohio State prior during the season, I just really didn't think you guys will, like, it wasn't an avalanche that y'all fell down when Trey Sermon went down. I think Master Teague's still a really capable back. It would have been like, I guess, way back in the early 7 days when we had Mark Ingram and Trent Richardson. I thought the gap was kind of like that.
Master Teague didn't get shut down to nothing. It's not like he wasn't productive in the game. He was fairly productive.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, yeah, I was just curious about that. It looks like he's a sophomore, so you guys got him for at least another year. But yeah, I think you guys are definitely good and set going forward at the running back position. The second thing I wanted to ask you, you may have answered this before. I've watched most of your Tennessee videos because I think it's a funny topic. But what value do you personally place on the Tennessee head coaching job? So I think this is a very interesting question because to anyone who knows anything like college football history knows that Tennessee should be a big name. The problem with that is none of the players who are being recruited right now were alive the last time Tennessee was doing anything significant. And then you toss in the fact that, but you just look at the way that they've handled the head coaching situation after Phil Fulmer. Lane Kiffin wasn't their fault, although it was hilarious. But then the Derek Dooley stuff, Butch Jones, how those fires came and went, and Pruitt, and now I think we can almost assume they were trying everything they could. I mean, they wanted this. I think they wanted this investigation stuff in order to get rid of him without a buyout. That's my personal opinion. So what value do you think the Tennessee program has right now in comparison to other programs?
So you may recall that I asked a similar question to one of my guests on one of those two Tennessee streams that we did, because I had the same thought that I feel pretty confident that if we went across the country that I could evaluate just about every job across the country as, at least in my perspective, being a top 5 job, top 10, top 25, whatever. But that Tennessee would be at the top of the list of having this strange mixture of present and recent past issues and mediocrity at best,
right,
versus history and resources, not just the history. If you've got history, but you're not doing anything now in terms of pumping money and resources and all of that, I can't think of a good example who would have tremendous history, but right now is just really dead in the water with no hope.
Closest example I can think of would be Michigan. But Michigan's history was all before World War I.
Well, no. See, I'm not thinking Michigan because Michigan has the capability. I'm thinking of anyway. If I come up with anybody, I will. But with Tennessee, they have the facilities, the stadium. They fill the stadium. They have a rabid fan base. They have support. They have money. They play in the premier conference in the country, which is, of course, a boost, but it's also a detriment in terms of the competition on the field. So I still see them as a tremendous potential program. Like, it's not Illinois, where okay, is this university going to support this football program to achieve at the level that they need to beat a Wisconsin and win a division and go to a conference championship game. Like I don't have any doubt that Tennessee's committed to winning in football. They're just screwing up and they're just hiring wrong people and they're not getting it done. But do they want to? Will they put the money and the effort toward it? Yeah.
But here's the problem, though, is it's no secret that Jeremy Pruitt was hired after sources say anywhere between 8 and 11 other people turned the job down.
Yeah.
Including, by the way, David Cutcliffe at Duke. Duke football was more desirable than Tennessee football. So when you say they're not Illinois, I'll almost put, I'm not sure who I'd rank ahead of Illinois or Duke, but the point is regardless of where they are, they're located in where they should be able to recruit easily. In the SEC, they have the money, they got the fans, they got facilities. They honestly got a pretty decent location as far as like being attracted to players. They're not in the middle of nowhere. I've been to Knoxville once or twice.
Yeah.
It's pretty nice. They got all that, and yet people were turning that job down because they just didn't want to deal with it. And to me, in my personal opinion, with everything going on right now, with all the investigations and apparent Title I violations and stuff, or Tier 1, it's almost like it should be even less attractive than it was back then. I'm not saying this to put Tennessee fans down in the dirt even more than they already are. I don't think it's even possible, but I'm just looking at it from an outsider's perspective. I'm trying to see any situation that this is in any way a valuable position. Like with Tom Herman, if he was offered the job, would he take it? That's a name been thrown around.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like you. The name Tennessee still rings with some sort of power, hollow as it may be. It still does. So you feel like they should be able to get a head coach they want to, but every sort of evidence in the last 10 years says that they won't.
Yeah. So this is the factor that I'm going to throw in that I can't verify, but I'm an outsider. I'm just a guy that watches college football, that worked in an industry that was close to college football, but not in college football, covered college football, all that sort of thing. But I'm an outsider. So what I know about Tennessee is what I know about Tennessee. Anything that everybody else can read online, I can bring in Tennessee people, a guy from 247 Sports a few times in the last couple months, and, just kind of add up what it looks like from the outside. Well, what it looks like from the outside is that the tangibles still add up to the potential of a great program. Plenty of money, resources, stadium, fan base, interest in a decent high school football playing state compared to the rest of the South, not on par with Georgia and Louisiana and Florida, of course, but much better than it used to be as people moved to Nashville in particular and moved to the state. So they've gained a lot of population and therefore better high school football playing in the last 10 or 15 years. So all that adds up as a positive. But when you've got we'll take David Cutcliffe, for example, he has so much access to having conversations with people that know, like, what's going on there? What's it like to work there? Do you think this guy's going to be a problem? Do you think this power structure there is something I'm going to have to deal with? Like, this was brought up a lot when the Texas job became open. Not that it was open for long, but just over the last couple of years in the speculation of replacing Tom Herman, that even though Texas has all this going for it, not a lot of guys that could fill that position want to take that position because they have to deal with all this crap, all this politics, boosters. And again, it just goes back to all sorts of, old buddy systems and good old boy connections in Texas that you have to deal with. And maybe it's a different sort of intangible negative element at Tennessee, but maybe it exists there too.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty remarkable when you think about it. Texas job. They should only have to recruit the Dallas area, and they should be in the playoffs almost every year. I mean, a job like that, you would think every coach would be lining up, would be taking a raffle ticket for it.
And Houston's a tremendous high school football playing city.
Yep. All right. Well, I'm very interested to see how this works out. They apparently got a pretty good hire at athletic director. I'm wondering if going forward, if the athletic director name is going to be as big as the head coach going forward, because everyone seems to want to turn this into a huge story. I'm going to admit right here on YouTube, I don't even know the name of Alabama's athletic director. I don't care.
It's Byrne, right? I can't think of his first name.
I don't know. I could Google it right now, but that's how much I've never cared about the athletic. I mean, I knew who Mal Moore was, but that was only because I was there at the college at the time.
Yeah, he was there forever too. I remember when Mal Moore was there.
And I also know the whole story of him getting Saban away from Miami and the conspiracy about Drew Brees. But anyway, I'm going to leave. Just one last question. Don't think about it too hard. Just off the top of your head. In the last, 15 years, who has performed the worst against expectations, Tennessee or Miami? Against expectations.
Tennessee.
All right. Well, man, have a good day.
All right.
I agree, by the way.
Appreciate it.
but it's not far off. Miami's right there.
They are right there. Yeah. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Good conversation as all with Reasonable Gump. I thought he was going to leave that wide open for me to go across the country who's fallen short the most from expectations. For me nationally, since Mac Brown left and even a couple of years of his final years, it would be Texas. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hunter from Alabama.
Hey, Hunter. What's up?
How's it going? I'm
good. How you doing?
I'm good. Hey, I'm going to take the conversation a slightly different direction. What do you make of the Auburn hire? I lived here in the same island and had several different people give me their take. My take on it is that you're getting in my opinion, you're getting the same thing that you just fired.
Well, there's a lot of different reasons why coaches are attractive. Basically, they run some kind of system that they're known for, whether that's on offense, typically on offense these days, not on defense, because I think one of the key components would be hire an offensive mind, and then he hires an extremely strong defensive coordinator, like a Will Muschamp kind of guy that can just take over the defense. But anyway, or a guy that obviously there's got to be some kind of component there that people know why that coach is what he is. With Brian Harsin, I got to admit, I would never sit here and say I'm some sort of expert on Group of 5 football because I just don't have the time to watch it. So I see Boise State play, one game a year, 1.5 games a year, whatever. So when they hired Brian Harsin, the only thing I know is that, other coaches built Boise State to what they are. And Boise State's an amazing program. If you really think about where they're located, what they accomplish, and what they're able to do outside the conference on a regular basis and who they can compete with, it's amazing what's happened at Boise State. But that was Houston Nutt, and that was Dan Hawkins and Chris Peterson, and those guys built that program. I don't know that Brian Harsin really did anything besides take it over and not ruin it and just continue to win 10 or 11 games a year, just like his predecessors did. He didn't have to build it. It's known now for what it is, and I'm sure he learned a lot from those guys and what they established. So he's got a nice record. The record's really good at Boise State, but I thought, he's not known as, certain guys are known. You know, when Chip Kelly went to UCLA or even before that in the NFL, well, he's got this innovative offense. This is what he's known for, and this is what we're getting with Brian Harsin. I don't know of anything that he's done or anything that he's known for that is anything special. So I thought, I wasn't super excited about the hire. Like, this is an amazing hire. And obviously there's not a fit there. It's not like he's a Southeastern guy or has ties to the SEC. He does not. It's not like when Dan Mullen went back to Florida. Okay, he knows the campus, the program. He has relationships there. They love him there, and he's coming back home to where he was a coordinator. So Dan Mullen's a good fit at Florida. It's not that. You don't have that. He's got to learn a lot about the SEC. He's got to learn a lot about Auburn. He doesn't have any natural connections there. So obviously his hires on offense and defense, Derek Mason and the like, are huge. To compare him to Gus Malzahn, I don't know where you're going there, but I'm not saying that that's a bad comparison or it doesn't make any sense. I just don't know what comparison you're making.
The only point I'm trying to make is I think you're going to get the same results with Brian Harsin as you got with Malzahn. You're going to be mediocre. You're going to win some games, some seasons. You're going to win eight or 9 games, but you're never going to push them over the top where they need to be back to win, let's say, a Cam Newton type year where you have a very competitive football team. We can compete for championships. I just don't see anything in his coaching resume that suggests that he's going to be any better than Malzahn was.
Well, not to divert off your topic here, Hunter, but there's nothing in Steve Sarkisian's track record that indicates that he's going to win at Texas. So why did they hire him? If anything, Brian Harsin's been much more successful than Steve Sarkisian. Steve Sarkisian's won 60% of his games at 2 schools that have had coaches win a ton more than that since he left. So to compare Steve Sarkisian at Washington versus Chris Peterson, who then took it over and made it a playoff team and a Pac-12, the best program in the Pac-12, even Clay Helton, who gets criticized from everybody, has been more successful at USC than Steve Sarkisian was there. So I didn't understand that hire except for the Saban factor and the wow factor of the offense that he's been running, which obviously has to do with the best talent in the country too. So not to divert from your point, but let me ask you this. How do you view the Auburn job? Because I think there are certain programs across the country that we would have no debate on how great a job it is or what a marginal job it is. But Auburn's kind of like, you could make pros and cons about it being a great job, a top 10 job, or you could make comments and point to it being less than that.
Maybe it's just me being in the state of Alabama and being, an SEC fan, but I view Auburn as a top 10 job. I don't know exactly where I would rate that in the top 10, but I would say it's a top 10 job.
Okay.
At least, let me counter out to your point for a second. Let me defend Texas a little bit here. In Texas' situation, at least you can see that Sarkisian's a great offensive mind.
Yeah.
And at least you can see some brilliance there. And the Saban factor being under Saban, I think they gives him better knowledge and know how to structure a program.
Yep.
And gives him a model, so to speak. I just thought that Auburn would hire somebody with a little bit more of a better resume than Brian Harsin. I thought they would try to hire somebody who's had some established success in a big Power 5 conference.
Okay.
Some capacity, some sort of a capacity as a coach.
Yeah, so I made the same distinction about Sarkisian when I made my analysis a number of times in different venues. When he was hired, I just made the criticism of his coaching resume at Washington and USC versus his predecessors and successors at those two schools. So he did worse than both. But on the other hand, I made the same 2 points that you just made. Anybody who gets the stamp of approval from Nick Saban, and I'm not saying that it's not justified. It's justified. If Nick Saban says you're tremendous at what you do, plus on top of that, what you just stated, that you have to, if you're a coach that wants to achieve and aspire to better things, and you're aware and you're hungry and eager to learn, man, you're in the best place you can possibly be in the country to learn from the best on, okay, I made these mistakes and I ran these programs this way. Now I'm going to get to see that I was doing okay. I did about 70% of the things right, but now I get to learn from the best and see what he does and basically just model what he did, take it to Texas. So he probably sold himself, or they were sold on that aspect of it. I think it's legit. I'm just saying that Steve Sarkisian didn't, from a record standpoint, didn't achieve anything at Washington and USC that 50 other guys couldn't do. Where Brian Harsin.
Oh, I 100% agree with that point that you're making about his previous head coaching, success. I don't know. I just thought that maybe Auburn would have had a little bit of a better, somebody with a little bit better resume, as far as that goes.
Like,
I get your criticism. Maybe a Chris Peterson, or try to go after Ohio State's offensive coordinator. Clemson's offensive coordinator. Somebody like that who's had some success at a program. I don't know. I
sure.
Can't only point to a few different names, but
yeah,
I just thought that job was more coveted than it seems to be. It just didn't make a lot of sense to me.
Well, it seems to be a pretty common trend that the up-and-comers at the Group of 5 level are the guys that get big coaching jobs. And so he fits that. And I didn't know until this all came about that he had been offered all sorts of, and I can't name any schools. I just heard this commented on during the broadcast of the Auburn Bowl game, that he had been offered and was in the mix for a number of jobs through the years, high-level jobs. But see, the only thing that would back me off of Chris Peterson, for example, and I know you're not selling Chris Peterson, it's just a name that came to mind. And he's great. I used to rank Chris Peterson as one of the 3 or 4 best coaches in the country. When he left Washington, he made the statement, and maybe I'm putting too much on this, but it really resonated with me, that he was just burnt out, and just the grind of having to try to build a championship program from a recruiting standpoint and everything else. It was just a grind. He was just burnt out. So I can't imagine him going from Washington, where, sure, Washington tries. They want to win. They pour a lot of money into football. They've been very successful, but the pressure to win.
They made it to the playoffs against Alabama.
Yeah. Washington can be a tremendous program, but obviously they're not at a place where they're expected. They have to win. They're not at Oklahoma, Ohio State, where you have to win. If Coach goes to Washington, he could probably survive for quite a while going 8-4, and they're not going to go crazy. But for Chris Peterson, if that really dragged him down to go to Auburn and have to run up against Jimbo and Saban and Orgeron and those programs. But to your point, I get your point. You would expect that a accomplished Power 5 coach would be in the running for the Auburn job. The name that always comes to mind, I was just going to say Matt Campbell of Iowa State is the guy that I first and foremost think of.
Well, let me throw another name out there, and I think I'm surprised that nobody's trying to hire, because I've watched what he's been able to do, and I'm gonna get your take on this. The NC State head coach, that guy. Okay, you're talking about a program that is done for where it's located in the country, and where in the conference that he's in. He's done a very good job. I mean, for the situation that he's in. I mean, he's a pretty good recruiter. You know, he's been ranked in the top 25, I think, 3 times in the last 4 years. I mean, I'm surprised that nobody's trying to hire him. If I was Auburn, I'd be trying to hire him. If I'm Auburn's AD, I'm reaching out to him.
Really?
And yeah, I think he's a great coach. I mean, I think he's a good coach.
Okay.
I'm not going to say great yet,
All right.
but I think he's a good coach. I think he's been able to do. He's done something that I don't think anybody expected him to be able to do at NC State. I mean, they're not a great football team, but for the conference that they're in and everything that surrounds them, South Carolina and Clemson, they've done a pretty good job. I mean, he's done a pretty good job with that program. So I'm surprised that he got a bigger job.
Well, it's funny that you bring up Dave Doran, Hunter, because I posted a video on Dave Doran and my evaluation of his job there at NC State and what he's done maybe 6 months ago. You should give that a look. So here's my thought on Dave Doran. How long you been watching college football?
My whole life.
So what, the last 20 years? How long has that been?
Well, 25. I'm 25. So.
Okay. Been watching college football for 15 years, let's say. Okay.
Yeah.
What has NC State been during that time, regardless of who the head coach is? Okay. And my answer for you, and just pipe up if you agree or disagree, that NC State, for the entire time I've been watching college football, which has been a lot longer, they've been the same thing regardless of who's been the head coach. Sure, if they had a slightly better year or worse year, but basically NC State's been 7-5, 8-4 forever, for 40, 45 years. 8-4, 7-5, consistently. They go to bad bowl games. They go to mid-tier bowl games. That's what they do. Okay. I looked at Dave Doran's tenure, which was this was prior to this season, and they had a good season this year. They went 8-3, lost a bowl game, so 8-4. I looked at his tenure there. So they play in arguably the worst conference in America. I think there's a debate there. I don't think it's definitely the worst. But his record going into this season in the ACC was, get this, 21-35. He was winning 37% of his games in the ACC. 37% of his games. Now, I'm not talking about going 500. 37. He was 14 games under 500. So this year he went, 7-3. So knock that down. He's 10 games under 500 in the conference in 8 years. The reason NC State goes to bowl games, if you look at their records and their schedule year to year, this is their formula. They go 3-5 in the ACC, which is almost exactly what it projects out, exactly to 21-35. They go 3-5 in the ACC, and then they load up on a awful non-conference schedule. The only team that they've played during his 8 years out of conference that's any good out of conference is Notre Dame, and that's because they were forced to by the ACC contract. They play East Carolina over and over, and William and Mary over and over, and James Madison over and over, and all these awful group of 5 and FCS schools that boost their record so that they can go to bowl games. And that's their formula. He is 1-17 against top 25 teams since he's been the coach at NC State. So I just don't see where Dave Doran has done anything. I think he's been worse than the previous coaches at NC State.
Well, now that you put it into that context, I wasn't aware of those statistics until you just mentioned them. Yeah. And I guess that puts it in perspective a little bit more for me, I guess, of, hearing those statistics. Hey, okay. That changes my perspective a little bit.
And when I do that, I don't in any way want to slam the guy. I'm just presenting the statistics and then putting it into context, as you just mentioned. That's important to put things into context. There might be other underlying reasons why he hasn't done that well at NC State. But again, he's pretty much doing what every other NC State coach has done, is basically go 7-5 every year. And again, obviously better and worse than that. But when you put it all together, he's basically going 7-5 and going 3-5 in the conference. And pretty much everybody's done that at NC State, if not better. I'm going to put my Dave Doran video in the chat here if anybody cares to check out my Dave Doran video. But
well, too, and maybe it's to his defense a little bit. I mean, they're a basketball school. I mean, they got a pretty decent, basketball program there. So, I mean, maybe the commitment to football isn't what it is at, let's say, a Florida State or a Clemson or a program like that. So there might be some other underlying, things like you just mentioned that could be keeping him from being any more successful than what he has been. But he has done for the school that he's at over the last 3 years, he's done a decent job of recruiting there for what given the situation that he's in. I think he's done better than expected in that area.
I think their recruiting rankings, I don't know off the top of my head. I'm guessing they're in the mid-30s to low 40s.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that.
But anyway, my only point was that I just thought Auburn would have made a little bit of a more better hire than what they did, and we'll see. We'll see what the guy can do. I'm not going to really judge him until he has produced a product on the field. So we'll see. Do you think there's any thought to possibly Tennessee hiring Gus Malzahn? I've heard some talk of that. Do you think there's any stock in that?
So you said Auburn. Do you mean Tennessee?
Yeah, Tennessee hiring Malzahn.
I think that Tennessee needs to hire. I'm just going to give you kind of rough, intangible qualifications. The guy that they hire needs to be a guy that inspires, a guy that is just a strong leader, because he's going to have to fight through a lot. He's going to have to endure a lot. He's going to have to lift that program through a lot. Gus Malzahn doesn't strike me as that guy. I think he's a very capable coach, but it depends on who they can get. Gus Malzahn may be at the top of the list of guys that will actually take the job. I'd like to see somebody with a little bit more fire than Gus Malzahn at Tennessee.
Yeah, I just don't know how much interest it is in that job right now. I mean, with the kind of a mess that they're in, I don't know, who would really want to step up and fill that role. Maybe a Billy Napier or somebody like that.
Sure.
But I just don't know who would want to take on that mess. That is Tennessee football right now. But we'll see. We'll see where they go with this and who they end up
with. I wish Tennessee was good. Quick personal story. My granddaddy played basketball at Tennessee back in the 60s. And my granddaddy's told me several times that Tennessee should be, in his opinion, they should be in the top echelon of college football every year. And that he didn't understand why they weren't like they were back in the day. From when he was, playing basketball there.
That's very cool. Good stuff. Always like to hear the personal stories. Good stuff. Anything else, Hunter?
No, sir. Appreciate you taking my call.
Hey, absolutely. Have a good one. All right, 2 o'clock. I think we're 1 hour away from the AFC Championship game, the NFC Championship game. I forget which order they're in. I think the NFC's first. And I got to think again that has to do with weather, as opposed to the marquee matchup is, of course, Brady and Rodgers. So you would think that would be the second game. But I got to think it's mighty chilly at Lambeau. So I've lost track of all these comments coming down in the live chat here. But a lot of great conversation here. A lot of tremendous points made by all you guys. Don't know that we've got any more work to do here. I've left my Dave Doran. Man, I've been rough on Dave Doran. I didn't realize. I did a search on my channel. I did not realize this. I did a search on my channel and Dave Doran. And so it was like 5 years ago, he got a contract extension. And I don't know what video I shot. I saw that I responded to Dave Doran's contract extension in 2015. I don't have any recollection as to shooting that video or what it was about or whether I was critical or not critical, what it was. But I shot a Dave Doran video 6 months ago, and I guess I didn't realize it. So I shot another one 2 months ago. And so I posted both of those in the chat. So you got two versions of my Dave Doran rant. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hello, sir. How you doing today?
Hey, Michael. What's going on?
Not much. Just relaxing a little bit before the NFC Championship game. Hey, got a quick question for you. I won't put on your prognosticator hat today. Even with the conditions going on in Lambeau right now and with the game that they're in Arrowhead, which I'm sure you've been to both stadiums before. But who do you think more likely to fire for 4 touchdown passes between Brady, Rodgers, Mahomes, or Allen today?
Who's going to have the best game? Is that what you asked?
Yeah, who do you think will have the best game and fire the most touchdown passes?
Well, I'm an Aaron Rodgers guy. No, it doesn't have anything to do with his name. He spells it the wrong way. But I think he's the best quarterback. But obviously 3 of them are great. And I'll already put Patrick Mahomes in the great category because of what he's done. So I would Brady's got the most accomplishments, but I think Rodgers is I would argue that he's the greatest quarterback of all time when you're just talking about a skill set. So, but does the quarterback that's going to throw the most touchdowns, is he going to win the game? Well, I think that's more probable to happen today than at other times in history. But yeah, I'll say Aaron Rodgers throws the most touchdown passes, but that's just a guess.
Okay, but so you don't think history will be made today either with Tampa being the first team to play in their home stadium for the Super Bowl? I see.
They would be the first, right? I'm trying to think if there's been some close calls on that.
Yeah, but no, it sounds like you're picking Green Bay to win the game.
I'm not picking them to win the game. I want them to win the game. I made the statement earlier when we came on, and I thought that this would be a decent time to do a live stream before everybody started watching the NFL. That I predicted NFL games from Michael. I'm sure this was way before your time. 1979 was the first year I predicted NFL games, and for some reason, I just stopped predicting the NFL games only like 2 years ago. And I love the NFL. If I had the time and the resources, I would start an NFL channel. But I just couldn't. I couldn't do it justice now. But I would love the NFL, and so yeah, I can't wait to watch these games. But I am rooting for the Packers. Yes, I just am. Do I have a reason for that? I have no reason.
I do have a question. You say like Brady, Mahomes, and Rodgers is all good. Where are you putting Josh Allen, or because he's still only a few years into the NFL? He's good, but he's not great yet.
Well, he's not a great quarterback right now. Has he exceeded a lot of people's expectations? Yes. I think he was a questionable draft pick in a lot of people's eyes. A lot of people weren't. We jump on these quarterbacks instantly when they step on the field. I know Josh Allen was receiving all sorts of criticism after only a couple games last year, and now he's proven to be a tremendous. The guy is. When I say that the other three are great and not Josh Allen, that's not a knock on Josh Allen by any stretch. He's only played a year and a half, and he's still looking to achieve something. But man, he's I don't know who to compare him to offhand. Actually, I'm going to make an Elway comparison. I'm not saying he's as good as Elway, but he's just a big, huge dude that's athletic, can run, and has a cannon and can throw the ball from different areas on the field and make all sorts of great throws. Yeah, Josh Allen's just and I think Sean McDermott's had a hand in his improvement too, his development.
Now, do you think both teams will, I'm not sure about the one in Lambeau, but do you think either one of the games can be high-scoring games, or you think they'll be low-scoring?
You would think that the Brady-Rodgers matchup would be high-scoring, but the Packers have played the one issue I had with the Packers early in the season is I didn't know that they were going to be tough enough, strong enough in the trenches and as a defense to withstand and take them to the Super Bowl. But I thought they played a pretty physical game against the Rams last week. Really held down the running game. Great pass rush against the Rams. I was very impressed with the Packers last week. I wouldn't be surprised if, you know what, for me to comment on the NFL, I am just spitballing like any fan. I don't, I just watch the games on Sunday. I don't look into it. Like if you would have caught me 10 or 15 years ago, man, I just knew every roster up and down and just all the stats and everything and followed all the transactions and everything about the NFL. But I just watch the games and enjoy the games. So I'm rooting for the Bills and I'm rooting for the Packers.
Yeah, I was thinking it was going to, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if Buffalo won, but I think it's going to be a rematch of Super Bowl I. Anyway, Mark, thanks for taking my call. Enjoy the game. Stay warm because it is extremely cold out here.
All right, Michael. You as well.
All right, thanks. Yeah, thanks. Bye-bye.
We're going to have to remind Michael the next time he gets on. He has not been identifying himself off the top. And I yelled at David one week, and of course, I yelled at David one week about not identifying himself, even though I should know David's voice, Michael's voice, and Michael's got a distinct voice. So, of course, I know he's there, but always like everybody to let us know who you are when you get on the phone. All right. Yeah, I'm going to enjoy these games. I'm going to find out when my kids are going to be over today as well. Appreciate everybody who jumped on the line. Appreciate your support, your contributions. Of course, this channel will thrive, will succeed based on a number of revenue streams, including your individual contributions and also sponsorships that we hope to get here very soon, right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Enjoy the football today if that's what you're into, the NFL. I know many of you shut it off after the college game's done, but many of you love the NFL, and whatever you're up to today, have a great rest of your weekend, and be looking for those notifications. Of course, we're going to be here live with Pigskin Pete on College Football Coast to Coast Monday at noon Eastern, and who knows, maybe we'll see you later tonight.